Mark Dimondstein, the president of the American Postal Workers Union, is here with us today to talk about what's next in the fight for the postal, service. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
I'm sure you're getting a lot of calls.
More than calls, we have a popular outcry amongst the people of the country in defense of something that belongs to them and something that they treasure. And that's a very good sign for the future of the public postal service. So, yeah, we're getting a lot of calls, but we're getting tremendous support around the country.
Well, if people are just waking up, Postmaster General DeJoy has been trying to kill the post office with a series of new policies that have slowed down and delayed the mail, including canceling overtime, demanding that everything run on time, even if it means leaving large quantities of mail undelivered. Because of postal workers sounding the alarm and activist outrage, DeJoy was forced to stop making any new changes. But is that enough? Mark Dimondstein, president of the American Postal Workers Union, here with me to discuss the situation. Is it enough that they've stopped DeJoy?
No, look, it's a good sign that with this popular outcry of support for the public postal service, including opposition to things that undermine service, which postal workers are vehemently opposed to anything that undermines the service to the customers, and customers and the people of the country have made their voice loud and clear. So it's a good thing that the new Postmaster General had to take a step back. Your question, is it enough? Of course not. As important as ballots are, mail ballots are, it's vital to people's access to the ballot box, especially in this time of pandemic. As important as the next 3 months are, the post office has to thrive and serve the people of this country far beyond November. And it's not just about ballots. It's about medicines. It's about financial transactions. It's about birthday cards. It's about retirement checks. It's about exchange of ideas and information in all the different ways. And of course, e-commerce and vital supplies. So no, it's not enough, but I think that it's a good sign that the people push back so hard, rightfully so hard, that the Postmaster General has had to take a deep breath. And now it's all of our jobs to make sure that the post office is not undermined going forward.
How do members of the union take to the fact that it's quite obvious that the Donald Trump administration wants to undermine the Postal Service because he doesn't want people to be able to vote in the November election?
Well, I think it's a little deeper than that. So I think we have to backtrack a little further. Long before the question of vote by mail and the pandemic and the important intersection now of really voting rights and vote by mail, this administration has on their agenda the privatization of the public postal service. They put it in writing in June 2018 in an Office of Management budget report, that is the White House, that their plan is to dismantle the public postal service, break it up, sell it to private corporations for private profit. So the hostility to the post office the public post office is much deeper than the question of vote by mail or not vote by mail. So there really is an agenda. And now when we got into the pandemic and the economic crisis that the pandemic has induced, now there's a fork in the road because the Postal Service really does need financial relief. The post office does not run normally on tax dollars. A lot of people don't know that. It has to have enough revenue.
Somehow, a lot of people don't know that. And I think
it's one of the best kept secrets. I think if we went out and did a poll on the street corner today, probably 98 out of 100 people would say, well, of course it runs on tax dollars, but it doesn't.
Yeah, thanks to the right-wing news. I'm sorry, but it's like Fox News.
Yeah, and it's one of those best kept secrets. So what happens is you have to have enough revenue off postage and postal services to provide the universal service mandate, the small d democratic right to postal services, no matter who we are and where we live, on a uniform and reasonable cost basis. And so what's happened in the pandemic is actually the revenue is going to fall off. It's projected by the Postal Service that the COVID impact will cost the Postal Service $50 billion, not million, $50 billion of lost revenue over the next 10 years, just due to COVID, not other factors.
Let's break that down. Why is that? I mean, I know people are they're ordering stuff from Amazon like crazy. Why?
Right. Well,
how does COVID affect?
Yeah, that's certainly a good point. The letter volume has fallen off by 30%. So that's huge for any entity. Temporarily, the point you raised is true. The package volume has temporarily made up some of that difference. But all the projections are that can't last. I use my wife and I as an example. We have a CVS 3 blocks from our apartment. And for 3 months, we ordered online things we would have bought at CVS. At CVS. Now we're going back to the drugstore or the hardware store or wherever. So that package volume will not be able to be kept that high. And so the projections going forward is that the letter volume may not come back and the package volume increase may not stay. So, it's a world that's hard to project in right now, but the projections of the Postal Service are dire. And that's where now we have a fork in the road. Either there's going to be $25 billion of, in this case, taxpayer relief, emergency relief. Let's not forget at the end of March, the private corporations got over $500 billion.
I was going to say, I'd be happy to give you all that money for
right.
Yeah. I mean, they're moving it to like the oil industry,
right.
like they need it anyway.
Right. But this is where the president has again intervened, because they do have this agenda, but now it's taken some focus about voting rights. And you asked how our members feel about it. When you got the president of the United States, and look, our members are part of the entire political spectrum, from liberal, conservative, in between, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, Independent. But everybody is insulted when the president of the United States calls us a joke. Especially in a time of pandemic, when we're in the front lines as essential workers, carrying out this wonderful mission that we're proud to do, but it's obviously under difficult circumstances now. So, and the president also actually connected now withholding funds, the COVID relief, so that the post office cannot be as effective in vote by mail. And vote by mail should not be a partisan issue. Access to the ballot box should not be a partisan issue.
I was kind of thinking that, a lot of older people who may be more likely to vote for Trump would be the ones who would want to vote by mail. It didn't make any sense to me what he was doing.
No, it's just a chance to take another. Well, it's an opportunity to do two things. One, it's a chance to take another slap at the public postal service, but it also is an effort at voter at suppressing the vote, because people should have great confidence in the Postal Service in terms of vote by mail. We've been doing it for generations. In terms of military personnel, we've been doing it since back to the Civil War, and more people have been voting by mail. 1 out of 4 voters in 2016 voted by mail, and now in this pandemic, it's going to have to be more. And so it should be nonpartisan, but it's an effort to. If people's confidence in the Postal Service and in vote by mail is undermined, then people may not vote. And that's a form of voter suppression right there.
It does seem like the advocacy around saving the post office and maintaining the institution is bipartisan. Is that not accurate?
Yes, it is. And I think that's a very, very important point. It's number one, start with the people of the country. 91% favorable rating. I kind of joke with people, but it's not a joke. I don't know anything in life that has a 91% favorability rating except the Postal Service. But the important thing about that rating is, well, two obvious things. One is it's so high, and that's a very encouraging thing. But two is it's not partisan. It didn't matter if someone identified as a Republican or a Democrat or an independent in those polls. It was an equal favorable view and trust in the postal workers and the public postal service. So starting with the people, it's nonpartisan. The Postal Board of Governors, which is a majority Republican board right now, had a unanimous request for COVID emergency relief. Actually much higher than the 25 billion that's now been passed on the House side, and there's a bill sitting on the Senate side for the same amount. So that's bipartisan. And then on Capitol Hill itself, we certainly have friends on both sides of the aisle that realize how important the Postal Service is for their communities, their constituents back home. So there is a lot of bipartisan support, and I think we have to maintain that. We can't allow this to become the Postal Service and the need for COVID emergency relief to become a political football in Washington, D.C.
Do you believe that even with the destructive things that DeJoy has been doing, taking postal boxes, taking away the sorting machines, et cetera, do you believe that the U.S. Postal Service at this point will be able to handle all of the mail that's going to come if people vote by mail?
Sure. People, if you're on the inside, then it's almost silly when people say, and it's coming from the White House itself, well, the Postal Service doesn't have the capacity to handle, 60, 70, 80 million more ballots. We do about almost 500 million pieces of mail and packages daily. National mailings are routine. There was a CDC health information postcard that went to every adult in every home. We do census mailings. We do national advertising mailings. The idea of tens of millions of more ballots that are not put in the mail in one place, but put in the mail all over the country from every county and state is something that's relatively easy to handle. And there's great capacity. What you raised about some of the policies do raise a concern. But even with that concern, we're absolutely confident. Now, I think the voters do it. The post office doesn't run elections. The states and the counties do. And they have a responsibility to get the absentee ballots, the mail ballots to the voters, to you and I, on time and quickly. And if that's done, we think that as long as people vote quickly and early, there should be absolutely no problem. And look, it's safe, it's secure, it's virtually fraudulent free, and whatever obstacles have been placed in the path of mail speed, the simple way to overcome it is to ask for the absentee ballot early and vote early. And for those who feel there's not enough time, there's many states have drop boxes. So your mail ballot comes in the mail, you fill it out at home, you can actually take it to a county building or a government building where the election commissions have set up drop boxes. So there's no waiting in line, there's no COVID issues. But if somebody got their ballot late, the state didn't get it to them early enough, then there's a way around that as well. So, look, voting takes a little work. If you go to a polling place.
Do you have to have a stamp for voting by mail?
It depends on the state. Each state is different. Some it's postage paid. Others folks have to put on a stamp. But for 55 cents compared to getting to a polling place and waiting in line for a few hours, it's a good deal. And look, there's a little responsibility on all of us to exercise our rights. And that comes with voting early. And if we have to put a 55 cent stamp on it, it comes with that as well.
We are speaking with Mark Dimondstein. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. The president of the American Postal Workers Union, which represents more than 200,000 employees of the U.S. Postal Service and almost 1,500 employees in the private sector mailing industry. Mark, just switching gears for a moment here, can you paint the picture of what the U.S. looks like if the forces that want to privatize, and we all know who they are, any kind of mail delivery system have their way? What does this mean for people?
Well, what it means is that whether we have mail services, under what price and under what conditions would depend on whether somebody can make a quick dollar. And therefore, the public right to postal services would be gone. And, that would deeply affect rural America. But it wouldn't just affect rural America because there's urban centers where companies don't feel they can make money because there's not enough quotes density. And then the question of how much it costs. I mean, right now, I mean, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. You could walk into your local post office in one city and say to the postal retail clerk, I have a piece of paper, letter in my hand, and I'd like you to take it to the other side of the country for 55 cents. And the postal clerk says, no problem. But who would do it for 55 cents if it came down to whether somebody could make money off of that? The postal system is set up on a break-even basis, not to make money, but to break even and continue to serve the people of the country. We process and deliver mail to 160 million addresses a day. It grows by 1 million new addresses a year. There's no private entity that can say we're going to serve everybody on an equal basis. So a few companies would be enriched. Some Wall Street investors would be enriched. The question of privatization is pretty simple. We just say, follow the money. The post office takes in over $70 billion a year of revenue on postage. And there are many private entities that would like to get their claw into that, many Wall Street investors. And if they do, they'll be enriched, but the rest of us will lose a right. And so we may not get services at all. We may not get them 6 days a week. There may be charges for distance, for locale. Right. And so the whole thing would fall apart.
I mean, a lot of people, elderly people, or even any kind of people, any age people, get their prescription drugs through the mail. Prescription drugs are already super expensive, and especially if you don't have any kind of, health care coverage, and then you'd have to pay additional for a private delivery. I mean, this is just insane. Yeah,
and that's a very important point you raised on medicines. 80 to 90% of VA medicines to the veterans go through the mail. But it's also, I think, an important point on the question of e-commerce in general. The public postal service is the low-cost anchor of this massive industry. And the private package companies would like to get the postal service out of that so they can raise prices. So even thinking about the cost of e-commerce and the idea of free shipping, the idea of free returns, it's really the public postal service that largely enables that to happen. So, and it's interesting that private package companies like UPS, United Parcel Service, puts millions of packages a week into the mail system because they can't make money to where those packages are going. So that's
interesting. I didn't know about that.
That's an indication of how important it's a public infrastructure, and that enables the Postal Service to go everywhere on a daily basis. And that would not be there if it was privatized. And generally what happens with privatization of any public services, prices go up, services go down, and workers' wages and benefits are reduced. And let's not forget, when we talk about the public postal service, we're talking about good, family-sustaining Union One jobs. And that's important for workers, for our families, and for our communities.
And for the economy.
That's right.
We need people to have money in their pockets so they can spend it, so that other people can have money. We need money in circulation. We need people to feel secure in their work. Here's another thing that people rarely bring up, but I think it's important. The post office, I have one lady who delivers my mail in Brooklyn that I know her name. And she saw me when I got pregnant, not the moment, but she saw me pregnant and she asked me how I was doing. And during COVID, I asked her how she was doing. And, there's a personal touch to the post office that it's important that we put our finger on. I know my postal woman. I give her a present at Christmas time. She knows my name. She knows not to put my stuff down the street because she knows who I am, and she comes to my door even if there's a mistake on the address. There's something lost. The other guys, they blare up the street in the truck. You're afraid that your kids are going to get run over. They jump out, they throw the box, and they get back in because they're on the clock running. Not that post office people aren't doing the work efficiently, but it's the personal connection to the Postal Service through your actual postal carrier who gets to know you is something that would be lost if we privatize. Much like if a Starbucks comes in, the Starbucks worker isn't necessarily going to be as friendly to you as the coffee shop owner who was there before that you know her first name, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's something we need to mention.
Yeah, no, I completely, I think that's a very good point.
Just the depersonalization of our society.
I do agree. Yeah, and it's the postal carrier who's the main contact that we see with the Postal Service, but also the window clerk in the local post office. And postal workers take care of the community. They take care of customers. They often are able to identify if there might be something wrong because mail's piling up, and they may know who that person's son or daughter is that lives on a block away, and they can alert somebody or they can alert the authorities. There's many towns and neighborhoods, but probably more in rural America, where the post office is kind of the heartbeat of the community. People gather, they get their mail, they take care of business, but they also see each other and they talk with each other. And again, everybody knows each other. There are many window clerks, for example, that have helped people when they sensed that there was some fraud going on, or people started getting money orders to start to give to some of these fraudulent schemes. And there are many window clerks who have been able to take care of the customer and say, wait a minute, are you sure this is for real? And so they were able to notice those kind of changes in buying of money order habits that you wouldn't do without the personal touch and without the knowledge and without the relationship with the neighborhood, with the community, with the individual. So and also let's talk about normalcy after disaster, from fires or volcanoes, hurricanes, floods, and of course pandemics. Tragically, so often the post office is the first, and the postal workers bring normalcy back to people's lives, and I think it's greatly appreciated by the public.
Mark, where do we go? Where is the union going next with the fight, and how can our viewers plug into efforts?
Okay. Oh, great. Listen, the most immediate fight is the $25 billion in COVID emergency relief, COVID financial relief that the Postal Service needs to get through this crisis. It's being discussed in the stimulus negotiations now. It's passed the House of Representatives in two different bills, one standalone, one part of a bigger package. There's a standalone bill in the Senate that's co-sponsored by one Republican, Susan Collins of Maine, and one Democrat, Dianne Feinstein of California. That's a good way to approach it. Get it bipartisan from the beginning. That's a standalone bill in the Senate. So we're still asking people to call their senators in particular and say, look, this is something that's important to us. Get it done. It's not about enriching shareholders or CEOs. This is to help all of us. It is relief for every single person in this country that needs and values the public postal service. If you can, any of the listeners can go to usmailnotforsale.org. That says it all. usmailnotforsale.org. There's a lot of information there. There's also ways that you can volunteer to help. We just had wonderful actions a week ago, Saturday, and then on Tuesday, 800 actions around the country. Many people that it wasn't just worker-based actions. It was more community-based actions, getting out and saying, save the public post office, stop slowing down the mail, get the $25 billion relief. And there was massive outpouring of support and massive news coverage. Those will continue to happen. So anywhere your listeners hear, see, or even want to do it themselves, it doesn't take a lot to get 10 or 12 or 20 people in front of a post office one afternoon or one late morning, early afternoon, whatever, and make up signs and get out there and show the public, show the congressional representatives, show those who are running the post office that the people are very serious about defending what belongs to them. We want to defend it. We want to enhance it. So there are many ways that people can help. Many of your listeners have already signed petitions. They've been turned in. We don't have new petitions floating around, but that is another way that many of your viewers have already helped. We delivered over 2 million signatures to Congress. So it's
well, if anyone's good at delivering things, it's going to be you.
Yeah, it was a big giant priority mail box, with all of the. So we and just let your voices be heard. Write a letter to the editor about what the post office has meant to you and your families, there's a deep relationship between the small business community and the Postal Service. So a small business owner may want to write a letter. You can also get on the website of apwu.org, and there's a way that you can give a short video testimonial about what the post office has meant to you, and then we will share it through the social media world. So, following our Facebook at apwu.org, spreading that, following your programs like we're doing now, sharing it, and just constantly getting that word out there. It's been inspiring to postal workers. You asked earlier how postal workers feel about an administration that wants to do away with their jobs, lower their rights and benefits, and do away with this wonderful national treasure. So that's certainly a demoralizing thing, and it's demoralizing to have a PMG that's putting in policies that are slowing down the mail. Our DNA is never delay the mail, get it to the customer, treat it as if it's our own. But the flip side is how encouraged we are as postal workers.
I mean, it's
about the overwhelming
exactly the playbook of what these people do who want to privatize national treasures and the national good. They slow things down, and then they say, "Look, it's all slow. We should just get rid of it." It's just insane, and it's the same.
It doesn't work. But I was. The second part of my thought, though, is how encouraging it is to postal workers to see how much support and this outpouring. It's really an outpouring. It's an outcry and outpouring of support for the public postal service, support for postal workers, and people speaking up. And that's very encouraging to every postal worker that's dedicated to you, the customer, but to see how dedicated the customer is to the post office and to postal workers is a very encouraging thing. And we believe, as the American Postal Workers Union, that while the forces allied against us who want to privatize are certainly powerful, that the power of the people, united with the postal unions and all sorts of community organizations, from faith-based to civil rights to labor to veterans, that we are and can be and will be much more powerful.
Mark
we're
Dimondstein,
very optimistic that we're going to win this fight.
Mark Dimondstein, president of the American Postal Workers Union, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. And we'll continue to see this fight through. Again, it's not just between now and November. That's important, but it's way after that. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure people of this country have a vibrant and thriving public postal service with all sorts of new and expanded services for generations to come. So we're glad to be here. We're glad to be with the people of the country. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are growing it to the best of our ability. And also like this video if you like it. Just hit the like. I'm Julianna Forlano. You can follow me on Twitter, and you can follow ACT.TV across platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We do a lot of different things. So thanks again for watching.